Hello and welcome to another drive-in double feature. I'm Ryan,
I'm Nathan.
and this is the podcast where we talk about two movies a week every Tuesday and Thursday. But before I get into anything, we have a Patreon over at patreon.com/drive-in double feature podcast. Just a fun area. We're playing some games, having some fun conversations, judging each other's opinions, just stuff that's so good that you're like, hey, I'd pay $5 for that. And
And I think it's well worth it.
But if you're just wanting to hear us on our regular podcast, it's not locked behind any paywalls. But today, we're talking about 1992's Evil Toons, and that is directed by Fred Olen Ray.
Mhm.
This movie I've known about for a while
Yeah.
because I think I want to say like I saw it on like a YouTube like thumbnail or something one day, and
hmm
I was just like, what is that? And it was in the back of my mind, and I saw it on one of the streaming apps. Like, hey, now's the time.
Yeah, now's the time. No, yeah, I actually known about this since like the beginning of our podcast when we were picking movies. Remember when we started this, we were only picking like adult animated movies. Evil Tunes kept popping up, and I was like, okay, I'll save that for my back, and I'll put that in my back pocket. But hey, you picked it for us, so perfect.
Yes, definitely. This one, it's I, it's really hard to. So it's trying to be like a horror movie, but also a comedy. That's like to me, it's like it's trying really hard to be one of those like, hey, this is a really bad movie. Get it? It sucks,
Yeah.
like type of thing. And usually for me, that doesn't normally work. But you know what? This time, it didn't change my opinion.
Wow, good. What a turn.
so
Uh,
I, I this movie I it's going to be kind of hard to talk about just because it is very light on plot. It's pretty much just like these girls that end up staying at a house, and they have to stay there for the weekend because they're cleaning the house for the next owners.
mhm,
But a lot of crazy stuff happens, and
yeah.
David Carradine is there just walking
Oh,
around like
yeah.
some type of creepy pervert, just watching everything.
He's there, all right, for a paycheck.
Um, but I should mention, so the movie does start with David Carradine, and one of the I didn't realize this movie was predicting the future here, but
Oh,
oh,
yeah, I saw that. I was like, no way.
so if you know anything about David Carradine, he died from an accidental hanging,
hmm
and this movie he hangs himself,
At
and
the beginning of the movie.
at the very beginning of the movie. So it's I was like, oh wow, was not expecting that, and
No, it was both funny and really sad at the same time. Uh, Yeah, and then David Carradine kind of just walks around the rest of this movie. There's the evil book at the very beginning of the movie that looks just like the Necronomicon.
I was like to say it's like definitely not Evil Dead at all. Definitely not
No.
from Evil Dead. I mean, it's the book talks. The book it's brown. It's got like the little facey leather. It's got eyeball. And I'm like, oh my god! Like they literally could not think of anything else. It's I mean
No.
I think I don't think it was them trying to be like plagiaristic. I think it was more them trying to
Mhm.
like wink wink nudge nudge like hey it's Evil Dead, this is Evil Tunes
Yeah,
type
it's
of
like
thing.
it's definitely playing on the parody. Like you said, it's the joke is it's like, "Oh, look at us. We're a bad movie. This is a dumb movie." Um which made me laugh sometimes. This movie did at least make me laugh. I at least gave it that benefit, but it
Mm-hmm.
definitely doesn't
it,
elevate this movie in any way.
it wasn't torturous like some other bad comedies we've had to sit
Yeah.
through, and I there was a couple of moments where I did get a chuckle or two out of me, but
Mhm.
for the most part, I mean, I mean, I'm just gonna say, if you really want to see a bunch of boobs like constantly, this is it. Like, I mean, it's like
Yeah,
boob, like a boob almost every scene in this movie.
it's crazy. I was watching this, I was like, yeah, this feels like I'm just watching like Skinamax or something. And if you think you're going to get an animated movie with a movie named Evil Toons, you are mistaken, because this animated character who's evil and pops out of the book, it's in the movie for 90 seconds, and it feels like even less than that. It is not in this movie. There is no cartoons.
For a movie called Evil Toons, you'd expect at least more than one cartoon.
Yeah, they should call it Evil Toon.
And the little, so I mean, they do the gag where they break into the house, like they get, well, not, they don't break in, but when they find the book, they read the incantation, and then eventually the cartoon character comes alive, and then the cartoon character ends up possessing a girl, and the girl that he possesses is the killer throughout the whole movie, the monster. And then at the very end, the cartoon character jumps out of her body and dies. That's the only two times you see a cartoon in this movie.
Yeah, and it has like a dumb voice. It does the thing though, because there is a girl who's naked and the cartoon's watching, and it does the eyes popping out, whoa, and then all the
Awooga.
yeah, and rolling his eyes. So we do at least get that. That's a must for any cartoon.
Yeah, definitely. And if you want to see a cartoon sexually assault a woman, then this is the movie you need to see. So,
Yeah, yeah.
but getting into this movie,
Yeah, great movie.
um, I do want to. So a couple of the funny bits that I was like wanted to talk about. So, like I said, they're cleaning women. So it's like a group of four girls. I mean, two of them, I'm just gonna say, like, have almost no defining characteristics.
They
Like
don't
the
do anything but talk. That's
Yeah, and then the other one is like the shy nerdy girl, and the other one is supposed to be like the troublemaker, or the AKA the slutty one. I
yes,
mean, I'm
yeah.
just gonna say that, and but it's just it's very very tropey. It's very like one dimensional type of characters, and
Mhm.
I do like though, because the very first person we recognize is Dick
Dick
Miller.
Miller. Yeah.
He's in the movie. This is which is another Dick Miller sighting that we've had in this podcast.
Yeah, and he'll
And
probably pop up more.
yeah, but he drops him off, and basically he's there telling him uh, what is it? She's like one girl says like, "Oh yeah, she's a contortionist," and he says, "Contortionist? What's that?" She's like, "Oh, it's a political party."
Yeah, that's right. um, no, Dick Miller is one of the better parts of this movie, and I think maybe that's just because it's Dick Miller. He's like, he doesn't care about sex whatsoever. That's like for one part of the movie, which I think is funny. Like there's like a bit where he's at home watching a Dick Miller movie on TV, and
That part was funny.
yeah, and he's like, "How come this guy never won an Oscar or Academy
Yeah,
Award?" That was a funny bit. I thought it was odd, but he has a wife who's like shows up in lingerie. It's like it's Friday night, and he's like, "Ugh, why is there a Friday night every week?" Like she wants to sleep, and he's like, "Oh no,
yeah.
never."
Like his wife is like, a 10 out of 10 blonde bombshell, and she's half naked and is
Hmm.
like begging for sex, and he's just like just
The
does not.
nagging wife.
Yeah, just does not care one bit.
Hmm.
um uh, but they once they finally let them all out, and this movie just has like a lot of dumb dialogue. Like it's just
Yeah.
like a lot of like punny type of stuff, or like
Hmm.
just stuff where it's just like intending to be like a joke. There's one scene where like the creepy neighbor shows, because Dick Miller's like, all right, if you got any issues or whatever, you got Mr. Hinchlow down the street.
Hmm.
You can use his phone, because it's an old dilapidated house. There's no phones or anything in there, and Mr. Hinchlow shows up, and he's already just like being really creepy. Like all of a sudden he's like, oh hi girls, like I came here to get a good look at your faces. I'm like, what? He's like, well, in case the cops come and I have to identify your bodies.
Yeah, it's the classic, like you said, creepy neighbor bit. I do think that the parody there is funnier later whenever they're like, "Oh, do you know anything about this book, Mr. Hinchlow?" And he's like, I don't know, but it could be." And then it's just elaborates like it's the blah blah book from Germany, and it was from written in 1563 and brought to America in 1983 by this person. That was a good joke. That one
Yeah,
made me laugh too. Um, but yeah, everything with the women just really isn't that funny. It's funny more like in, I don't know, like it's just kind of bad, like bad ways to just show nudity. Like, how
yeah,
can we show boobs faster?
yeah. I mean, I always think that they try to make a big deal. Like one girl that's trying to be like the one responsible girl, I guess, is technically like the leader of the group,
Hmm.
but she still doesn't have much of a personality. She at first she's kind of like, all right, girls, we really need this job, so let's not screw this up. But then they go down in the basement and they're like, we should start in the basement because we want to get that one out of the way. And then they're like, oh, it's way too gross down here to even mop. Yeah, yeah, let's not clean the basement. Let's just they say in the movie, they're like, because they made a big deal about not losing their job, they're like, oh, well, there could be some valuables down here. Let's just split the valuables amongst all four of us, and then we'll just that way nobody will suspect that, like why they were gone. I'm like, what?
Yeah, right. Like I think like it's like almost the joke is like they're bad people because there's that one scene later where there's a dead body, and instead of telling the cops, telling anybody, they're like, "Well, we don't want to lose our paychecks now, so let's hide this dead body." And it's like, like that's how the dumbest way these situations can come together.
Yeah, just very, very big deal. I mean, like, because they tell him to, because Dick Miller says he doesn't want any hanky panky, no funny business
Mm-mm.
going around. And leading up to like the possession scene, the girls are just hanging out, and it's like obviously like the one, like no woman would like wrote this movie, obviously,
Yes.
because
Oh well, no, yeah, no, it's written by Fred Olen Ray, writer and director. I really
because
quickly get into that scene. I do have to say that production wise, that Fred Olen Ray says that this movie, once like I have it here, mainstream Hollywood executives will not finance the movie, and citing risk due to premise. So he's like, think what does he think? He's writing something daring. Roger Corman passed on this movie of all people. So it's almost like they knew what they had, and they're like, no, we will not be making this movie."
yeah, because he said he told Roger Corman that he could make it for $250,000, and Roger Corman was like, "No, that can't be done." And I guess this guy Fred Olen Ray, like he funded his own production, and he funded it for. I think he said he had it made for $125,000 is what I believe the final budget was.
Wow, that's pretty good. That's
So, but and that probably explains why there's only one cartoon in this movie, but because
yeah, because animation is pretty expensive, especially when like integrated with live action.
yeah, exactly. So they anyway, the girls, they just one girl like just starts like doing like stripping like naked like in front of
Yeah,
her friends,
it's
like
such
just
a bad
dancing.
transition too. She's like, "Oh, you want to see how I get all the men?" And then she just starts dancing and taking off her clothes in front of everybody.
Yeah, and then they're like, oh, they're cheering her on, like, yeah, woo. And then just like, and one girl's like, that was interesting. And
Yeah, that's weird. I didn't know that's how women hung out and did things together. I'm learning a lot.
well, and then like they try to get the nerdy girl up there to start dancing, and she gets real bashful. It's like, no, I don't wanna. And then she just runs upstairs. And of course, like she goes upstairs and gets naked and like looks at herself like with this humongous,
Yeah.
with her huge boobs, like,
It's
oh man, like
it's so long. She's staring in the mirror naked and she's just like touching herself, just like looking. I'm like, what is going on? Stop. Because I get it. It's supposed to be like, oh, I'm not beautiful, am I? But it was like a minute of this. Like, you got to understand how egregious this was.
yeah, I mean, it gets. I mean, it gets really old, honestly, and it's just
Yeah,
like, I mean, I get that's what they're going for, boobs, haha, but
yeah,
it gets real old for me. And it's just like, okay, I get it, they're naked or whatever, because,
exactly.
but the one girl that's real man hungry. She's like, I'm inviting a boy over, so don't come downstairs. And
Hmm.
they they do the incantation, and then the cartoon comes to life and possesses her after, like I
Hmm.
said, assaulting her. And uh there's a and like the other girls are like upstairs, and they're like, all right, it's time to go to bed. And they don't even, do you notice they don't even like get in their sleeping bags? They just like lay on top of the sleeping bag with
Yeah,
no pillow at all. And I'm like, what?
dumbest thing. And then it does the classic joke of the woman screaming downstairs, she's getting murdered, and like, oh, she's really getting it. Oh
Yeah,
boy.
yeah, like doesn't even sound like, sex screams or whatever. It sounds like she's being murdered. And they're like, oh man, he's really giving it to her. Like,
Yeah.
and so it was just like a big dumb joke. But after that, she does become possessed and just topless pretty much for the rest of the movie. Like she's got like a shirt, like an open shirt, and you can just see her boobs constantly.
Yeah, she even seduces Dick Miller, and one of the weirdest scenes because she's seducing him, and all he says the whole time is, "Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy." He just says it over and over, and I know it's a joke, but it's not. It's not a great joke.
And then she bites Dick's dick.
Exactly. Yep. And then he goes, "Oh boy," right,
Yeah.
or something, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, if you're, I mean, it's really hard for me to describe because it's just literally like she kills the boyfriend character that comes over.
Hmm.
She kills Dick Miller's character and kills Mr. Hinchlow.
Yep.
So it just, a lot of scenes like that where it's just a lot of running around like in the house, like, oh no, like what's happening? And Roxanne, like that's the girl who's possessed, like
Hmm.
pretending like she's not possessed at all, like, oh, like, what, like, I don't know what happened, I don't know what's going on,
Uh
even though she's
huh.
acting completely weird and like,
Has
and
blood
no,
on her.
yeah,
Yeah, this movie's 90 minutes, and it lacks on a lot of content. Because I'm like sitting here and I'm like, what does happen in this movie? And no, it's like them just running around. Oh, they go back to the basement. Okay, now they're back upstairs and they're getting chased a little. It's not the most exciting movie.
no, and I wish I had a lot more to say about it, but it's just, there's not really a whole lot of substance there. I mean, it's literally just, you want to look at women's boobs throughout the whole movie. And
Yeah.
because I mean, there's multiple scenes after that where the girls are getting topless
Hmm.
again, like, oh, time to get ready for bed, and like they're getting stripped, they're taking off their top, or like, oh, like, hey, just they find convenient ways to take off their tops, and it's
Hmm.
just, you see that a lot. And it makes sense though when you read about it, because I guess one way to save money is that Fred Olen Ray got porn stars to be in this movie.
Whoa.
And there's only one girl in there that does not have like porn in her credits.
Really?
And yeah, that was like the leader girl. That's like the only one that was like
Okay, yeah.
somewhat of a legit actress. So
Yeah, because the only one I looked up was the main girl, like the nerdy one, and she's in a lot. Like just looking on her IMDb, it's yeah. So they definitely picked people that were easygoing with their nudity. I'm sure for a
yeah,
13-year-old boy renting this from Blockbuster or Hollywood Video back in the day, it was a dream come true. And
oh
showing your
yeah,
parents, it's a cartoon. Look.
yeah. I mean, when you didn't have the internet back then, I guess if that
Hmm.
was, it's like, yeah, like that would have been heaven. But
Some.
at this time, it's like, you can literally just type it into like a search bar and you can get whatever you want. So
Yeah, exactly. It's just not really entertaining. It's sometimes funny. David Carradine's on the cover of everything for this movie, He's in
He
it
does.
barely, and he doesn't do anything.
He literally does not. He has that hanging scene, and he kind of consults with the main, like with the brainy girl a little bit,
Yes, yeah.
and they talk for a minute. But it's like there's next to nothing. It's like clearly just there, like you said, to get a paycheck and just show up. So it's not even like a good David Carradine movie. If I was gonna say anything, like Dick Miller is probably like the best part of this whole movie.
For
So
sure, yeah.
um, there was a couple other funny bits where they figure out, like, as I haven't said like the whole time, like, why don't they just throw the book in the fire? Like, why don't they just
Yeah.
destroy the book? Because they make a big deal, like, this monster keeps coming, and they finally like, oh, why don't we try throwing the book in the fire? And
Hmm.
what do you? And they had, oh, that was the other big thing, was they had to have the stupid dagger all the time, and
That's right, yeah.
they had to have like a special dagger to kill it, and then they threw the book into the fire so that way the Toon couldn't go back into the book. But
Yeah, and the Toon's like half dead on the ground, like, what do you do with the book? Like says
he's
lines
like,
like that.
he's like, yeah. He says, "I'll get you the sequel, bitch."
Yeah, and then I looked up really quickly if there was a sequel because we would have to watch it.
Thank God there isn't, but
No.
there's not definitely not a sequel. But they solve everything, and then turns out everyone's okay. The curse was broken. Nobody, all those people that died violent deaths, they're fine. So,
Yeah, David Carradine is just, I think he says that because his whole thing, he just explains the plot. And then he's just like, no, everybody's going to be good in the morning when you wake up. And yeah, there you go. Everyone's there. Even the neighbors there, Dick Miller's there. They just all think they're hungover.
yeah, they were like, oh, it was some wild party last
Hmm.
night. And then the neighbor brings over his TV, and it's like, do you guys want to watch some cartoons?
Yeah, and then our main character screams at the camera, and it's so poorly done too. I don't know if you noticed this. Like, it's like they had to give her directions. Like, they zoomed in the camera, and she's like not doing anything, and then really late she screams into the camera.
There's some very shoddy work in here. That was the other thing I
Yeah.
was going to bring up. So in the scene where Mr. Henchlow shows up for the first time in the kitchen,
Hmm.
and he's saying hi to everything. Did you notice like the camera was just moving so erratically? And I'm like, do they not have a tripod, or like, or is this like handheld or what? Like,
Was the room too small and they couldn't set up a tripod in there or something?
but I mean, it was literally like, because when you do like pan shots, you have
Yeah.
like, with the camera you have like a little arm so you can move it, and it does
Hmm.
that way, it keeps it nice and steady.
Hmm.
But this one, it literally like it was just like these jerking camera motions. I'm like, is somebody like just holding the camera like a camcorder or what? Like,
Yeah, could you imagine? I'm sure, knowing this movie, I mean, and how much it cost, like it's all on screen for you. You really can tell.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I I I think that's pretty much it. So Nathan, would you give this movie a recommend?
No, no, I wouldn't. You can watch much better. Look up the filmography. Look through these women's filmography, and I bet you'll find a better movie there than Evil Tunes.
Well, for me, I mean, because it wasn't a very good movie. It was a little too long. I got a little bored during it, but since it has cartoons and boobs in it, I give it a recommend. So anyway, what are we talking about
Yeah,
next time?
two things that we love.
No, I do not give it a recommend either. And
Mm.
I again, even for like the so bad it's good qualities of it, I can't even say I recommend it, because I mean, to me, it's like when a movie's doing like the wink, wink, nudge, nudge, like it's bad. Get it? It's bad. It never usually works on any level. So I uh, I definitely say there's a lot better horror comedies out there that you could watch.
Totally agree. There's much better wink, wink, nudge, nudge movies than this.
Yeah, but that's gonna wrap it up for this movie. So Nathan, what are we gonna talk about next time?
All right, Ryan, guess what we get to talk about next time? So
Is
I
it more
wanted
sex?
more sex. Well, because, all right, hear me out here.
Oh, oh,
So recently, and not too recently, as of when this is going to get posted, we did have a very great director die, William Friedkin, and I wanted to, celebrate him, pick a movie. So guess what? We're watching Cruisin' from 1980. Yeah, and it's not streaming anywhere, so you are going to have to rent that one.
Oh, terrific. Can't freaking wait.
Nice.
But if you got some evil tunes you'd like to share us, or just tell us, hey, I like evil tunes, I like seeing boobs on screen, well, then you can email
Yeah.
us over at drive-in double feature podcast at gmail.com. Don't forget to post us on X at DIDFpod. And once again, follow us on the Patreon at patreon.com/drive-in double feature podcast. But until next time.
Until next time.